I knew then that there was a void in the industry. And when I came back to Texas, I said, if I get an opportunity, I'm going to open up a medical spa. And I just kind of laid out all the things that I disliked about the industry. And I try my best to incorporate those changes into my practice now, while being a representation for people of color.
Welcome to the Medical Entrepreneur Podcast. We have a very special guest with us. You might have seen her on TV, Apryl Witherspoon.
Hi, guys. I am Apryl Witherspoon. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I have been a nurse for about 13 years now. I've been a nurse practitioner for about 8 years. And I work in New Aesthetics in Carrollton, Texas. I own a medical spa. We offer all of the aesthetic services that you essentially want for natural enhancement. But I am so happy to be here on Medical Entrepreneur with Adam and Jennifer Sewell. And hopefully you learned something today.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good takeaways. So.
Oh, most definitely. And one of the things that's so impressive is just also like how much of a following you have. And then also just the fact that you were featured on Urban Beauty TV, I thought was amazing as well.
Yes. So I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to be on BET Her Urban Beauty TV. To be able to just discuss Black-owned med spa, just because, I feel like the industry is becoming a lot more diverse. People absolutely love and they seek and look for representation, whatever that may look like, if it's males, if it's skin of color. So I'm happy to be a resource for that.
Something you said to me when we first met that, people feel comfortable whenever, how did you say that? Like if we can relate, how people feel more comfortable?
So I feel like people are constantly looking for representation. They're looking for someone that looks like them, someone that can relate to them. Oftentimes, when you think of Botox and you think of filler, so we'll go into aesthetics specifically, you automatically, like your mind goes to this person that looks porcelain, that is overdone, and may even look like a cartoon character just because it does not look natural. So there are certain cultures that they kind of still look at it as a taboo thing to do. So if they can actually see someone that looks like them and they don't look crazy, they still look like themselves, they look refreshed, then it lets them also know that, hey, I too can receive these services. I can benefit from them. And then they start telling their friends and their family, and then it becomes less of a stigma, so to speak, in the community.
For sure. I love how you're doing a great job. I feel like even on Instagram and all your social channels of educating and trying to break that stigma.
Absolutely. It's necessary because you don't know what you don't know, right?
For sure.
So true. And Apryl, could you tell us a little bit about your journey into aesthetics? Kind of, how you got into medicine in the first place, and then what drew you to aesthetics?
As an RN, I worked in the ICU primarily. So working at the bedside, if you work in the ICU or you work at the bedside period, there's a lot of hustle and bustle. It's long hours. So in the ICU, quite naturally, that is end of life for most people. And when it got to the point where I feel like I was becoming desensitized to death, not necessarily that I didn't care. I love the fact that I was there to help the family through that process. But for me specifically, it was like, hey, you get your patient passes and then you already are admitting another patient. And then you look up and it's like, hey, when is lunchtime? Like it should not be to the point where you don't even stop and process everything that's going on. So I knew it was time for me to leave the bedside. I end up going to be an NP, a nurse practitioner. So family practice, I was like, this is it. I'm not going back to school. We're going to do the family route so that it encompasses, cradle to the grave, so to speak. And I absolutely did not like family practice. I just feel like it's kind of a dumping ground. I hate to say that. It was essentially like everyone was like, oh, okay, well, follow with your PCP, follow up here. And you just get this patient that comes in and they have like 25 different concerns and you can only really talk about 2 of them. So I got burnt out doing that. Then I did urgent care. I loved urgent care, but seeing 50 to 60 patients a day was really not my thing. How do you really get to know a person and be able to help them? You can't. So I worked alongside a family practice physician, and she was doing Botox. And I'm like, what the hell is Botox? So I go in with her, and the patient was healthy and happy. And she's just like, what else are we going to be doing? So I immediately became obsessed with this aesthetic thing. So I learned, I just kind of just engulfed myself in Botox and filler and other laser treatments. And it was really hard to get into. I wanted a job in aesthetics, but I just really couldn't get into it because I didn't have the experience. So my husband and I moved to California, and I was working urgent care, but I got this opportunity to work in West Hollywood at this medical spa. And when I tell you I made my husband move, we moved from Newport Beach to downtown LA. He hated it, but it was what I wanted to do. So worked in West Hollywood. I was working at urgent care at the same time, and eventually took a huge pay cut, but I didn't care because that is what I wanted to do. So I pretty much got majority of my aesthetic experience in California. I feel like I've seen some of everything. But one thing that bothered me is every time I would like walk into the room and it was another patient that looked like me, it was like almost deer in the headlights, like, okay. And you just saw like this sigh, like their body language, this sigh of relief, like, okay, I really can like tell you what I really feel and how I would like for you to help me. So I knew then that there was a void in the industry. And when I came back to Texas, I said, if I get an opportunity, I'm going to open up a medical spa. And I just kind of laid out all the things that I disliked about the industry. And I try my best to incorporate those changes into my practice now, while being a representation for people of color.
Wow, it's such a good story. So passionate. When you say that you try to take out the things you didn't like about the industry for your med spa, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So, being in the med spa industry or the aesthetic industry, we all know that it's huge, but it's very small at the same time, and it can tend to be pretty cliquish. And we do have the stigma of the mean girl club and all of the things, and I just hate that. I hate that. I actually have a zero tolerance for that in my practice. We're all showing up. We're all going to get along. We're all going to show up for the patient and create an environment where everyone feels welcome. There would be times where I would go to work, and, the owner she'd take these few people out, they go on trips and vacations and things. And then like you have all this other staff, like, why are they showing favoritism? And it just creates a toxic environment. And I just feel like it's already a small, close community of people, so to speak, that I feel like we should be networking, and we should be doing various things where we can, collaborate in the community and not have to be like, I don't go on that side of town, or I'm not doing that. So I feel like patients feel that energy. They absolutely can tell. Another thing that I disliked was the whole pumping them in, pumping them out model. I don't think that you can really get a great grasp on what truly is concerning to a patient in 15 minutes. I know that you have to, consider time, but a consultation really should be of the entire face or all of their concerns as much as you can, as opposed to dismissing them, because you're really missing out on another opportunity to bring them back in for another treatment because you haven't even stopped to figure out what what else they're needing. So those are the primary things that I really dislike. And then, advertising to various populations, so to speak, making sure that you're not doing things that are being obviously exclusive, so to speak, as opposed to being inclusive. So, usually when you go into locations, they don't have a lot of photos up of men, if you really think about that. And men want to know, I can too go in here and I can do those same treatments. I hear it all the time. Can I do that too? Of course you can. They just don't know that they can because they never see a picture of another male, So those are the things.
I have to agree with you on all the points. I love what you said, the inclusivity and, forgetting the mean girls. Like you think that stops in high school, but unfortunately it can,
It's so
carry on.
bad.
Yeah. When I first met you, that's what I just noticed, like your energy is like it was love and like there's inclusivity of everyone around you. And I think that just draws people to you.
I try to. I try to attract my same energy as much as possible. I just don't understand. Life is too short, right?
Right.
So true.
So, on that note of what you said you didn't like in the industry, is there something else, anything else you think in the industry that everyone should stop doing?
I feel like the layperson or the consumer feels like it has become a let me shop around type industry, so to speak. I feel like we should stop belittling, so to speak, or downplaying that this is actual medicine that we're practicing as opposed to, hey, let me just have you come over real quick and then I'll just give you a little Botox or something. Like it's an actual medication. So I feel like we have actually started to succumb to letting the patient come in and tell us what they want done, as opposed to us telling them in order to achieve the results that you want, these are the steps that it would take to get there. So yeah, aesthetics in general, I feel like it needs to be a lot more regulated on who can do it. Here in Texas, literally, if a teacher wanted to go do Botox, take a course on the weekends, they technically could do it here in Texas. And, it's all the other factors that you're not taking into consideration. Like, what about the anatomy? Let's just start there. So I despise that aspect of how the industry is going.
That's so true. And I think you're 100% right, because one of the things that I see is that people, they end up going to the kind of bargain basement prices, and you see like one med spots, oh, Botox is $8 a unit, the next one's $7, then, they just keep dropping it down. And so what ends up happening is you have the worst service, people that are unqualified to inject. No one's really doing a consultation. They're just saying, oh, hey, what do you want? Okay, here, I'll inject it. And many times they miss like so many important things. And the customer doesn't even, for the customers that come in, they don't even understand all the options that are available.
Exactly. And they don't. And you don't take time to even, you don't have the time to even discuss that with them. If you even understand yourself, what all you could offer to them as far as like a full facial rejuvenation. And another point that you made as well is you have a lot of unqualified providers. Again, it just depends on whose practice it is. I feel like personally, if the practice is owned by some sort of a medical provider, then your perspective is different than just anyone that opened up a med spa and then they hire underneath them, because everything is going to be business, business, business. Yes, you do need to know your numbers, but everything can't be just a black and white. You have to still take into consideration, hey, does this patient qualify for this? Because if they're not a good candidate, then they don't get the treatment, not just because, hey, we need to make that sale. So I feel like you definitely have to take all of that into consideration.
And I wonder what other industry is it where the patient or the customer would do their own research and then go in and say, hey, this is what I want. Like you would never go to a general surgeon and say, hey, take my gallbladder out because I'm having, we go through like a physical exam and, do some workups. But for some reason for aesthetics, like it seems that sometimes patients do want to dictate the treatment. So I agree with you on that.
I think we have a TikTok University to blame for that right now.
Agree.
In your opinion, what are the most important trends that are happening in the aesthetic market right now?
I would say more of the unnatural lips. Everybody kind of is into the brat doll look right now. With Black China, so she has a platform. Whether you like her or not, she still has a platform and she still can be influential. She has started to reverse some of her fillers. So that does seem to be a little bit of the trend now. Some of these celebrities are coming out. They're removing their fillers, and going with a more natural appearance. And, I'm here for it. I still promote filler if you are the candidate for it. However, I love that they're kind of, influencing the rest of the population to just do things that appear to be an enhancement of themselves and not distorted. Because we were getting a little out of hand with the lips and the cheeks at one point in time, and some places probably still. But that's a deterrent for a majority of people. They just want to, turn back the hands of time just a tad bit.
How do you have the conversation with someone maybe that wants the brat doll look, but you think it would be out of proportion to their face? How do you approach them?
We still have a conversation about the areas of concern and facial balance, full facial rejuvenation. I talk to them about you can't go larger here if you don't have the support around the mouth. So we need to talk about maybe looking at the chin and different areas that could make or create an appearance that they ultimately kind of want. But some patients suffer from body dysmorphia, as we know, and there's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to miraculously make them happy. So sometimes I do encourage patients to, maybe go elsewhere, or I'm not the person for you. I'm pretty big on what my name is associated to, or who's walking around saying they came to see me. So my reputation is important to me, and I will politely tell you that I'm probably not the provider for you.
That's great.
That's a really good point, is to choose the right patients because they do represent you 100%.
Absolutely.
Could you share a story about maybe a patient that you treated and whose life was improved by your treatment?
Oh, I actually feel like this happens more than not, because it does not matter if it could be the smallest little dark spot or line on a person's face, and we may not even notice it as soon as they walk in, but it is something that has bothered them for years upon years. And sometimes just addressing that small thing, that small area, could really boost confidence in certain patients. Now, one in particular, there was a patient, she had a car accident. She's one that stands out to me. She had a car accident, and, obviously having stitches or sutures over time, she had these huge scars in her cheek. And yes, it just to the naked eye looked like there were some acne scars. I didn't realize the backstory of the accident. And when she showed me some pictures of the way that she looked post that accident, her face looked extremely distorted. So as I see her, it took about 3 treatments whenever she came in to see me, but we did some HA filler, we did some sculpture, we did some micro needling, radio frequency micro needling on her. And it wasn't completely smooth, but it literally, I'll just say, popped out some of those indentations that she had enough to where it wasn't bothersome to her. And it was a little crying fest for her, but it changed her outlook on life. It really gave her the confidence that she needed, even though I just looked at it as some acne scars that, she had probably dealt with all her life. So again, it's just the smallest things that you can do to really boost confidence and impact a person's life. And I love mistakes for that because it's a different way of helping people.
Have you ever had stories then of like once like they've had that physical transformation that maybe they have transformation in other areas, like maybe they go get a better job or maybe they get out of a relationship that wasn't the best relationship? Like once they have the physical, then there's an internal transformation that follows?
I feel like that's always the story, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. Most of the time when they come in, they're either coming out of a relationship, just got a divorce, about to get married. It's usually some life-changing situations that they feel like, okay, I'm ready for a change and I'm ready to do something for me. And to me, that's the prime time to do it, when you're in a headspace to put you first and invest in yourself. That is the patient that understands this may be a little process, but I want to stick it out and I want to do it for me.
That's why I say a lot of times I feel like it goes just to your general health. I always tell a story when I was a kid. I had like a little bit of growth on my face. I had silver teeth, and I was very self conscious of my image. And especially, like you say, there's mean girls, mean kids. And like if anybody said anything, I just wanted to shrink down into the ground. And even a lot of times, like if the teacher in my class said, like, oh, does anybody know the answer? I didn't want to raise my hand just because I didn't want people to look at me. And so just from my personal story, I feel like that like what we do in aesthetics is really is transformative because a lot of people look at it, maybe it's just very surface level beauty, but like you really have the opportunity to change someone's outlook on their life. So I love your car accident story.
I mean, let's face it, there are some people that come in for the superficial aspect of it. We all have some sort of, desire superficially to look a certain way. We always, most of us tend to care about what other people think about us as well. And so it does not help. It does not help the situation at all because you're constantly on camera. Someone's constantly filming you, videoing something. So any sort of, again, confidence booster that you give somebody, that really resonates with you internally that you just put a smile on someone's face. Now, I will say this. We do live in an age of filter. And that is one thing I feel like the industry struggles with as far as injectors go, because think about how often someone brings in a picture to you and they're like, can you make me look like this?
I was like, she doesn't look like that.
That isn't real. So I think oftentimes we do have to combat what realistically what is possible and what is not realistic. I don't foresee that going away at all anytime soon. So we just do the best we can and focus on the positive stories, that you just mentioned.
And April, is there any thing that you could tell us about kind of your journey into entrepreneurship? Like, obviously you started, I think, working for someone else initially. You got tired of that. What was the passion or driver for you to just kind of start your own business? And can you tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurial journey?
So my specific, passion was to help with avoiding the industry where we're moving toward more diversity so that other cultures, so to speak, they understand, they know that this is something that I could benefit from as well. It doesn't matter who or where or what skin tone. At the end of the day, people just want to see someone that looks like them. That's what initially got me into aesthetics, so to speak, or wanting to start my own business. Let me say that. Now, as far as the path to open my own practice, I come from a clinical side. So it was me being a complete novice, wearing so many hats, so many learning curves. It was an eye-opening experience. I'll say that. But what kept me going was my purpose. Like I knew I had to make it happen. And just the person that I am in general, failure is really not an option. It may look different to some people, but it's not an option for me. So also when you feel like you have people that are depending on you as well, meaning if not me, then who? So who else is going to do this? Who else is going to be there to be a representative? So I did put that pressure on myself to make sure that things worked out like I felt like they should. Now, starting up, I was working full time and I opened up my practice. So I moved from California. That's where all my clientele was. So I did have to build from the ground up when I got to the Dallas area. Was that an easy task? Absolutely not, because no one knows who you are. I probably could have or should have tried to work somewhere else, but I felt like if I worked somewhere else, I probably would not have been as motivated to open up my own practice. So, I started out the Groupon route just to get clients to the door. Then I quickly saw that's not my clientele 100%. So I pretty much used all of my savings and a couple credit cards that I had to, purchase products, to pay the lease. So I feel like from the ground up, literally brick by brick, is how I started. And it made me appreciate things so much more. And I was at a conference this past weekend, and the point made was hustle is innate. You cannot teach that to anyone. So either you have it or you don't. And I feel like that's also something that's kept me going. Like I said, failure is not an option for me. So we were going to make it work any way we needed to. Have I wasted a lot of time and money getting started? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love to talk to other aesthetic providers or just nurses, NPs, PAs that want to start up their own practice. I do let them know that we're not driving around in Bentleys drinking Mai Tais all day. That's not what's happening here. Because I do think people really think that, you make all this money, and is there earning potential? Absolutely, but you have to do the right thing and the money will come. Many people have it backwards. They are all focused on the money, and they I feel like they struggle more because their intentions are not right. That's kind of my background starting up. I started in one single suite, and now we have pretty much more than half of the building. And I have a staff of esthetician, laser tech, a director of operations, two front office coordinators, and another part-time nurse practitioner that injects. So it's been a long time coming, a lot of prayer and persistence, but here we are.
And I always find that the entrepreneurial journey is also like a self-development journey. Do you find the same thing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am. I'm typically going to be um, a pretty down to earth person. I don't make many waves. I'm just kind of go with the flow for the most part. As an entrepreneur, as someone's boss, you cannot have that attitude all the time. You will get ran over. And has it happened before? It has. But I had to really focus on the needs of the business as opposed to, oh, I really like them, and I do. I have a great staff, and I feel like I have essentially prayed for that to be the case. Like I pray for God to send me people that reflect my intentions and my brand. But yeah, you have to put your foot down and set boundaries and stick with the numbers. And if it doesn't make sense for the business, and it just doesn't make sense, we can go out to eat later, but you don't fit the needs of the business. So unfortunately, you have to cut your losses early sometimes.
Especially people in medicine, we're so caring and giving, and some of us, like, even I'd say during the training, we almost get like a martyr syndrome where you're supposed to sacrifice for others,
Yeah,
and that comes out. And often when you start as you being your own boss, if you sacrifice too much for others, there's not going to be a business and nobody has a job. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I had a coach tell me one time, and she was like, "You have to focus on those things, otherwise, this is just a really expensive hobby." And I don't know, it's just like that should be common sense. But when she said it, it was just like, ding. Nobody's just hanging out just in here just because. Yes, you love what you do, but if you're going to have a business, you have to run it like a business.
Yeah, for sure. You said that you waste time and maybe lose some money. Any mistakes maybe that you made that that you always when you mentor someone else that you say like, "Hey, don't do this," but I did in business or
Yeah, when it goes to products, and like I tell people, the reps are really good at what they do. That is what they do, and you have to be able to to set some boundaries there as well. Just because they come in and they sell you this $100,000 device because it can do A, B, and C, and D, E, and F, you have to have a clientele for that. There has to be a need. It's not always build it and they will come. So just making sure that you aren't making big purchases just because you feel pressure to do so, or the med spa down the street is doing it, so you feel like you have to compete. Am I happy about my purchases and my device purchases? Absolutely. I feel like they are being very useful. They're very useful in my practice, but could I have waited a little bit longer before I jumped out there and bought a device? Absolutely, I could have. Could I have honed in on my service offerings instead of just adding everything I saw that everyone else was doing? Absolutely. Those are some changes that I have made. Pricing, starting out, like I said, I started out on Groupon. So realizing the value of, my skill set and who I am. And yeah, you have to get patients in the door, but you also have to make sure that you are attracting a certain patient population as well, if that is the brand that you want to uphold. So, yeah, making sure that all policies and procedures and documents are in place. And even though you have no staff, you go ahead and you prepare for onboarding because when it happens so quickly and then you're kind of chasing your tail. So those are some things that, make sure your house is in order before you open up your doors and you start to expand and hire on staff. Marketing, go on and on and on about money spent in marketing because they're going to send you 100 patients a week. So right? So it's just those are some lessons and any sort of pearls and tips that I can give providers trying to get started. And I love to do that because I didn't have anybody to tell me or to help me. I literally just fumbled through it myself because I knew that I wanted it that bad. And that's one other thing is just like the investment in yourself, no one can take away from you. And I do find that some people are so eager to get away from the bedside. They don't truly understand the investment that it takes in this industry. It's expensive and it literally costs money to make money. Like you hear people say that all the time. No, it really does because you're not going to like I still spend at least about $10,000 a year on trainings just because I want to continue to enhance my skill set, stay current. The industry is always changing. So those are definitely tidbits that I would tell somebody as I do any consulting or chatting with someone wanting to get into the industry.
I agree with that. Like, I'll just constantly always learning and just seeing the way other people do stuff as well. Is I think that training and self investing is some of the best money you can invest is investing in yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're not ready for that, this probably is not the industry for you.
Right.
I think you said something that was really important, just, regarding like the Groupon patients and these kind of things. A lot of people don't realize like when they first start up, and especially, when you're single injector, you're trying to do it on your own, and you're like, I don't have any patients. And, you kind of feel maybe, a little ashamed of that even perhaps. Mm-hmm. And so you're taking everybody in. Could you maybe talk about how finding the right patient versus the wrong patient is so important and finding that right audience like you described?
I think it's important. That kind of goes back to your brand. What is your brand? Do you want to provide the cheapest services and get any and everybody in there and just have clientele all over the place? Or do you want to get in that the client or the patient that understands that this is a journey? That you work by a treatment plan. You understand the average price of these treatments and it's not a negotiating battle whenever they walk through the door. I think all that matters. Typically that weeds out those that are just bargain shopping for how much is this syringe and let me call down the street and see how much this syringe is. Newsflash, syringes don't put themselves in. It is the provider that puts the syringe in. So good luck. It always ends up being more expensive than in the long run to fix these problems that could potentially happen. Or you're going to places that don't even have a Holonex, any reversal, or you're just like the stories that I see in here is just crazy. So that is likely, I know for sure that's not the clientele that I want to attract. I want someone that actually understands that they're seeing an actual medical professional that if something goes wrong, nobody ever hopes for anything to go wrong, but let's face it, it can. So what are you going to do at that point in time? And are you going to trust and follow the plan that this provider it has put in place in order to get you the most optimal outcome? So that choice of clientele or patient could literally make or break you, because doing everything the cheap route is not sustainable, if you ask me.
I totally agree. And also, I think it's really hard to deliver high quality results to people that are trying to nickel and dime you about, the smallest treatment, and trying to get the cheapest thing. And it's like, well, you get the cheapest thing, but it's like, it's not going to, you could have a much better result with just a little bit more investment. And, so it's really hard to deliver high quality.
Absolutely. Because, we spoke about, type of services and doing a full facial versus letting the patient come in and show you that they want this one thing done. To your point, if they just get this one thing done, they're still going to be very underwhelmed, because remember, they bring in the filter photo. They want all of that with one syringe. And if you don't understand, yourself, that you cannot achieve that with one or two or probably even three syringes, this patient is going to, in their mind, you don't know what you're doing. That's the first thing that they're going to think, when it's really a lack of education for the provider, and you have to educate the patient. They're not the expert at this. You have to redirect those conversations.
That's something else. I think, the industry, I wish everyone could get on the same page, like you're talking about earlier, things you don't like in the industry, because you may say no, but unfortunately there's someone down the street that there's such of a scarcity mindset, like, oh, I have to get every patient, that they will do their one syringe. And then people do get suboptimal results. And that is what gives, sometimes the industry a bad name.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And, it's a med spa almost on every corner right about now. So, I think it's important to, as far as branding goes, what sets you apart from anyone else? And that's kind of what you hone in on, to focus on, providing the patient whatever type of customer service or whatever type of results that you ultimately want them to have. If we focus more on that, totally agree. We focus more on that and doing the right thing, then I feel like patients will stick with one provider, instead of hopping around getting under eyes here and then lips from me, and then they'll go get their, Botox from Eugene. So, it's just, they're all over the place, and it's hard for any provider to kind of know, like, what product did you use? What is going on here? So I do feel like if we collaborated a little bit more in the industry, that's one thing that, we have HIPAA, obviously, but sometimes I feel like we should be able to have like a billboard that says, if this patient comes, or this patient just ran out on their bill, or if this patient does something, like, we need like a portal or something. So, because it's just as important to us that, we get the right clientele in, that's not going to be a huge disservice for the sustainability of our businesses as well.
I've always said, just like there's a health grades for doctors, or, the ratings for doctors, there should be one for you to have like a medical license to log in. But same thing, you can look up for the patients. So maybe that's our next venture.
Exactly. I mean, just keeping it real.
I love it.
I was just wanted to ask you, how would you compare your life before you got into aesthetics to your life now? Like, maybe could you compare the two?
It was a lot slower. Now my life is very, it's very fast paced. I was actually speaking with Jennifer, and she's just like, just when you think you've caught up, there's always so much more to do. And it's so true. It's a never ending task list. And that was probably one of the more challenging things for me, because I love to check off boxes and cross things off and say I did it and I'm done. But it's a lot of multitasking. You have to manage your time, because you will forever feel like the list is here and your sanity is down here. So, before, I was fine with going to work, or let me not say I was fine. I probably went to work and I complained and all of the things. But then now I'm in a position where I can make decisions to where if I don't like something, then I can at least attempt to change it without having to go through a whole board of, C-levels that ultimately aren't even doing the hands-on anyway, so they don't have good perspective.
Amen. Hospital
So,
administrators. Exactly.
but yeah, it's very rewarding. My life now is very rewarding. Just to be, completely transparent, if you don't have the work life balance, it can be a struggle and pretty challenging on your relationships. If you have kids at home, trying to manage and make time for their schedules, and keeping your spouse or your partner happy while keeping your own sanity together. So those are the real things that I'll tell people. That's something else when you go into business or being an entrepreneur, that you have to make sure that you maintain that balance. Otherwise, it will swallow you whole.
Since you brought up the spouse and children, I know you mentioned that we were talking before that you and your husband maybe do like dinner dates together or whatever. Do you have any advice that you give maybe for someone who's kind of in the building phase of their business for keeping your relationship together, or tips that you and your husband do so you don't let the work consume you and you still focus on yourself, on your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I didn't always have it together when I was first kind of building. He was the person that I vented to, and I know he's probably like, "Oh Lord, here she goes again with here she goes again." But I think it also is important to talk to your partner about this entire venture and what that may look like, in the time that you may not be able to spend together, just to kind of get them on board, because it's going to be impactful whether you realize it or not. Because you're going to be, you may come home from work, and then you're working on some admin stuff, and all your spouse was doing was waiting to just talk to you just for a little while. So I think it's important to have cut off times, or either factor in certain even admin things into your workday. I despised doing it at first, because I was like, oh, well, I'm going to miss out on seeing a patient if I put an hour block in, just so that I can, fill out some documents, or catch up on charting, or catch up on inventory purchases, or whatever the case was. But I have found that that is part of your work day. So being able to manage that work calendar, and when you come home, your family will be happy. You'll be happy that you're actually not checking your emails, etc. And it really kind of decreases that anxiety level.
I think that's really good advice. Just scheduling the time for other areas of the business that's non-clinical. There's a statistic once we heard, I think it's Google, like they assign, is it 20% of their staff's time is like just thinking in the creative phase and working on new ideas and in their business. And I think that's a good lesson for all business owners to take. You're scheduling in just a percentage of your time to work on the business.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, could you also describe maybe like how you approach doing the clinical aspect of treating the patients, but also managing the business at the same time? Are there any tips and tricks that you had to kind of learn? Because, so often when you come from, a lot of people that go into medicine, medical entrepreneurs, they start out as an employee or maybe a contractor or something like that. And then they go and have their own business and like, oh, well, now they got 3 extra hats. They got to be the CEO. They got to be the marketing person, like.
Yes. That was definitely a transition. Let me just say that. Because what I love to do, even still to this day, I love to do the clinical aspect. I love to talk to the patient. I love to do the consults. I love to inject. I don't love all that other stuff, but I know it's necessary, in order to keep the business going. One thing I didn't do that I felt like I wish I would have done sooner was to hire on at least a front office. That one particular person, if you really break down how much it costs to do a treatment versus what you could pay them to help take some of the tedious tasks off your plate, to me, that as soon as you can hire on somebody, that would be the first person, as far as I'm concerned. Then that way, now you have freed yourself of answering the phones. And after you've done seeing patients all day, then you got to go return these phone calls and to return these emails. So your day is not over after you've seen the last patient. But if you have your front office, then they can be answering the phones and they can be responding to these things. They can be working on getting your schedule booked. They can be working on some Canva posts to help you with whatever, monthly specials that you're going to be doing. It just is sharing the love is definitely something that I would recommend. As soon as you're able to share the love, then do so. Then you don't have to, resort to asking a family member who probably just got done working their full time job as well. They love you, so they'll help you out a little while, but you don't want to take advantage of that person and burn them out in the process as well.
So true. We've done that before in our first few businesses.
Oh, but no, it's true. Just, you said before is like, I know that stuff's important, but I don't love it. But there's someone who will love that. And that's the great thing about being a business owner, as you get to provide a lot of great people with doing jobs that they love to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you want to vet that person. That's for sure. But I feel like my sister owns a business as well, and what she does versus what I do, just this day and age, it's hard to find staff. Just talking to any other business owners, it's really hard to find good staff, keep staff. But I will say a lot of people are wanting to go into the beauty industry or just get their foot in the door some way, somehow. So, by the grace of God, that has not been a huge challenge finding applicants. Maybe the right one, yes, but just getting applicants in, that's a fortunate thing about this industry.
I feel like actionable advice and just personal advice, professional advice. So many good nuggets in here.
Very true. If someone was, watching this and maybe they're still working in a hospital, they're feeling, kind of crushed by the mainstream medical system, what advice would you give them?
I wouldn't say consider aesthetics because you think it's the easy way or it's going to be something easy. I would definitely say if you're looking for a career change, meaning you want to go into a different aspect of the industry or specialty, then aesthetics is something to consider just because it's not even a specialty that is brought up or you hear about during your clinical rotation during nursing school. Unless they've changed now, it hasn't been a part of the curriculum. So I would definitely say if it's something that you have some interest in, to start doing your research, meaning look at different training opportunities, training programs, maybe follow a few injectors that you admire or you admire their work or you listen to things that they say as far as they're educating. Don't just run to TikTok and listen to somebody that just got a service done. But there are other opportunities of working remotely as a nurse, to where maybe you can do some other type of consulting. But when it comes to aesthetics specifically, maybe book a consultation or ask to do a shadow day to see what a day in the life looks like, because you may not even like it after the fact. But if you do, there are countless opportunities for you to grow in aesthetics.
I think so. And I'll tell you that I think that aesthetics is changing a lot. There's even a study done by Allergan recently, and they were trying to figure out how much of the market has been penetrated by neuromodulators, them being the manufacturer of Botox, of course. And what they found out was very surprising. They came back and they said that only 5% of the market has been penetrated. So another 95% of the market still remains people that would likely be interested, but just haven't, and this is what, we find a lot in our med spot, and I'm curious to see if you find the same. Do you find a lot of people that are very interested in aesthetics, but they're kind of on the fence because they don't know enough about it?
Yeah, absolutely. That particular question and statistic comes up so frequently in trainings and conferences. It's mind blowing because, like I just mentioned, there's a med spa on every corner, but it's still so many patients for all of us to see. So many. So that collaboration over competition absolutely is so important. Now, with that being said, that's why I kind of joked about the TikTok University, because they don't know enough about it. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know that, You can't take one course and get your certificate and then you're certified to go do injectables and filler and all the things. You have to learn the company, the manufacturers. You have to learn the different type of products. You have to learn the services, the different areas of the face, different treatments, skin tones. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on. And just when you think you got it, something changes.
So
So
true.
I just, to your point, there are so many opportunities. It's just, you're right. Where do you start to figure out not just what you should do, but the right information on what you should do? And what is the process for that to be an ongoing learning opportunity for you?
If someone wanted to follow up with you more, where they might go to follow you or to learn more about you?
So I am Apryl Witherspoon. My practice is New Me Aesthetics in Carrollton, Texas. That's NWME, New Me. You can find us on Instagram at New Me Aesthetics, NWME, and then aesthetics with an A. Here we go, guys. New Me Aesthetics. Um, on Instagram, you can follow me also. It's at Apryl G _ natural beauty NP. And our website is www.newmeaesthetics.com.
Well, thank you so much, April. It's been such a great interview, and we've learned so much, and I think it's going to help so many people.
It was our pleasure.
Our pleasure for
Yeah.
sure. Thank you, April.